This episode of Decoding TV is brought to you by McDonald's. McDonald's, I'm loving it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Decoding TV, a podcast about television. I am David Chen.
I'm Roxana Hadadi.
Welcome to the podcast, folks. On today's episode of the show, we're going to be discussing Season 2, Episode 4 of The White Lotus. And I'm really excited about it because there is so much to discuss. Roxana, we have our first kind of mini scandal on this podcast, whereby we didn't really make a mistake. We made an oversight, and we got a bunch of emails about it. So we'll talk about that. You can find more of episodes of this podcast at podcast.decodingtv.com. Email us at decodingtv@gmail.com and find us on TikTok, Twitter, and YouTube at Decoding TV. Now, we got a bunch of emails at decodingtv@gmail.com about I don't know who of us said it. I think it was you, Roxana, that was talking about how in the opening credits of the show, there is a woman who appears to have sex with a goose.
Yeah, I was very into the swan sex and curious about it. But I didn't Google because why would I try to educate myself in any way?
Exactly. It's makes no sense for you to try to do that. But we got a ton of emails at decodingtv@gmail.com, which was great. It was actually great. I love receiving the emails because it shows people
thank you
care.
For everyone for pointing out my complete lack of like Greek and Roman mythology education.
Well put. But a lot of people pointed out that what is being depicted in the image in the opening credits, which by the way, I believe is the same paintings and frescoes that are in the house that Harper and Daphne stay in.
That's another maybe.
Yeah.
I didn't notice that. Okay.
It's actually Leda and Zeus from Greek mythology.
Okay.
And I'm reading from a few different emails here, but Matthew from London writes, Zeus took the form of a swan and raped Leda. Some versions imply that it's consensual, but others say otherwise. That's basically the whole story, end quote. Now, how does this apply to the White Lotus? Well, there's a lot of people speculating at what this could mean. But Matthew continues, the fact that Harper's a lawyer who deals in sexual misconduct and Burt bringing up rape directly a couple episodes ago. It seems like they're setting up some kind of assault to happen in the future, very likely, end quote. Another person writes about, Mark from St. Louis writes to decodingtv@gmail.com about how like Albie is willing to say or do whatever he thinks Porsche wants in order to have sex with her.
Right.
End quote. And so maybe it's about like Albie trying to become a different, take a different form in order to get in Porsche's good graces. Who knows? But yes, I do think that it is probably foreshadowing. I will say that in the opening credits, when the swan is shown having sex with Leda, the name that appears on screen, I believe, is his director of photography. So it's not a character. It's not an actor and
they
character.
Covered their tracks with that one.
Yeah, they covered their tracks well with that one.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if you have any other thoughts, Roxanne, on this.
Well, we've talked about this from the beginning. We don't really understand everything that Dominic might have done back in the day, right? I mean, it seems like there's like infidelity and potentially something else. So I don't necessarily know if I got the sexual assault is going to happen read, but I could definitely be in the more infidelity will happen camp. Especially with like Harper and Ethan and Cam and Daphne. I just feel like you don't get 4 characters who are always comparing and contrasting without potentially something happening there swap wise.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
We will see. A couple people wrote in about the parallels between The White Lotus and the Antonioni movie La Ventura. Monica Vitti appears in La Ventura, the 1960 film, and Tanya, the Jennifer Coolidge character in The White Lotus, is obsessed with Monica Vitti in this season.
Right.
I'm reading from a website called cheatsheet.com.
Ooh.
Monica Vitti's breakout role was in the international film La Ventura. In Tanya's Italian Dream episode, she became Monica Vitti in La Ventura. Antonioni directed the drama and filmed it in Rome and Sicily. It is about the search for a young woman, Anna, who goes missing during a boating trip in the Mediterranean. The woman's lover, Sandro, becomes infatuated with her best friend, Claudia, who's played by Monica Vitti, while they search for Anna. Before Anna went missing, she complained to Sandro that she was unhappy with his long business trips, and he didn't seem to care. Tanya wants to become Monica Vitti in the White Lotus Sicily. However, she's more like Anna than Vitti's character, Claudia. And I should also point out, in the end, Sandro finds another woman to replace Claudia when they check into the same resort as Tanya and Greg in the White Lotus Sicily, the San Domenico Palace Hotel. End quote.
Uh-oh.
But yeah, there was a scene with
Harper,
the Aubrey Plaza character, that was basically like exactly the same shot as in La Ventura, and a lot of people pointed that out. And there are parallels between the plot of La Ventura and Jennifer Coolidge's plot in this season of the show.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks to everyone who wrote in about that as well.
Yeah.
And then I think that's all the emails we wanted to cover on this episode.
I'm sorry, did we not want to also cover an email that validated my opinion about our nice guy trademark?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm trying to forget that email, but Fred from Los Angeles writes in, to further Roxana's points from the recent episode, not only does Albie needlessly go after the Godfather, I'd argue his words were performative at best.
Thank you.
There's a moment during his monologue where he clearly checks to see how Portia's responding to it, and it indicates to me that he's saying what he thinks she wants to hear. I've known a lot of guys like Albie who go for the low-hanging fruit of men be bad, expecting it to get them attention from women, and then get angry when women don't instantly fall in love with them. It seems very clear that Albie's going to great lengths to show Portia that he's doing everything she wants in a man, so that if and when she rejects him, he can throw it all back in her face like, see, women don't really want a nice guy, end quote. Well, we will talk about whether or not that happens this episode.
Yeah,
but
I feel like that is a very interesting perspective heading into this episode and everything that happens with Albie, Portia, and all the other characters that sort of interact with their storylines. Because now we're getting that. We're getting a lot of interacting between storylines.
Yes. Roxana is very much on the Albie sucks train.
Yes.
And I am not off that train. But I am maybe on the Albie is a sympathetic character and also potentially sucks as well. So
I mean, both things can be possible.
Both things can be true.
But I think he sucks is like 1A, and then he's sympathetic is like 2C.
He sucks is like list. A P0 if you're launching a product.
Yes.
Albie sucks would be the Decoding TV P0, according to Roxana Hadadi. Okay. Of course, you can always email us at decodingtv@gmail.com, and we read your comments as well on Twitter at decodingtv, on YouTube, youtube.com/@decodingtv, and so on. The last thing I want to mention is some good news. The White Lotus has been renewed for season 3. Yes. So there is going to be another season of The White Lotus, theoretically with another cast of characters. And I am very curious if Mike White's going to create more of a writer's room. I'm pretty sure he wrote every episode this season. Like, he's the sole credited writer on every episode this season.
And last season. I mean, this is like his whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am curious if he'll bring in some more perspectives. I do think that even this season, we are seeing some of the limits of what can be explored with this format. And so I'm just curious how next season will evolve. But I'm still quite enjoying this season. And so I'm looking forward.
How will the White Lotus survive all of these deaths in various locations?
I love how, there's all these deaths. And I think that it's very likely that next season it's all going to be kind of a corporate espionage thriller about how the White Lotus is able to turn around its public image given all these deaths that occur. You know,
White Lotus takeover edition, corporate takeover,
corporate leveraged buyout edition, basically.
Oh God, that would be a whole other level of elitism, class, wealth. I almost want it to happen.
Do you have any desires as to where you want the White Lotus to be set next season, Roxana Hadadi?
I don't know if I had desires. I had an immediate concern that it would be in like Dubai. I was trying to think of like other wealthy places it could be.
Yes. Why is that a concern for you, Roxana?
I mean, because I think
the show has handled, the depiction of non-white people so
well.
It's been overwhelmingly good how well it's handled.
Everyone has applauded it. Like, everyone has said, what a good job. Just because I think that I feel like Dubai is sometimes just Western or American shorthand for look, the Middle East can also be opulent and somewhat
Mhm.
superficial and consumerist. And
Mhm.
I sort of shudder at the idea of that expanded into a season. So I don't know. I mean, I really can't tell. I also wonder if we would go elsewhere in Asia. I don't know. What if it's like White Lotus, Hong Kong? I have no White Lotus, Macau. I cannot
Mhm.
tell.
Mhm.
Macau would maybe be interesting though. I was just joking about that, but that could potentially have some interest.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see, we'll see,
Do
and,
you think of anywhere? Do you have anywhere?
yeah, I think those you know, again, I'm less interested in the location and more interested in, like, I wonder if we can get a writer's room going and some differing perspectives in there
Mhm.
because I do think that would help the show. Like I said, I think we're running into the limits of what can be explored using the current sensibility,
Yeah.
and I hope that the show kind of branches out a little bit more when it comes to like other perspectives. So
Mhm.
we'll see. But I'm looking forward to it regardless. So, all right, I think that's all the stuff we wanted to talk about before we get to the main episode.
Yeah.
Season 2, episode 4, In the Sandbox is the name of the episode. In the Sandbox. Roxana Hadadi, why don't we start by talking about overall thoughts on this episode?
My overall thoughts are sort of what I alluded to earlier. It feels like a lot of the storylines are coming together right now. Some of them in a little bit of a more fulfilling way than others. And once more, I apologize. I keep harping on this. Harping, ha. Once more, I just feel like Harper and Ethan do not behave in a way that makes sense to me necessarily. So I just have such a frustration with Harper in this episode. I just sort of wish that she had been, I don't want to say more confrontational, but I feel like she has been set up to be this character who speaks her mind. And I understand that she is now sort of like reeling back from that given how Ethan has treated her on this vacation. But I sort of felt like her behavior in this episode to me felt like a very simplistic reading of how a woman would react in this way. Like be passive aggressive, be sort of digging, be looking for information without just coming out and saying what you think. So I didn't love that. And of course, as soon as she came back and started telling Ethan like how triumphant she was about Cam and Daphne not being happy, I was like, you need to talk about literally anything else to your husband.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. That sort of rubbed me the wrong way. But I'm very
Interesting.
curious about where the Quentin stuff goes. The Quentin and
Yeah.
Tanya stuff.
Well, we're like at episode 4 of 7. I'm like, it's
Yeah.
pretty late to be introducing a major character at this point, and
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm curious how they're going to tie that up in any way that's kind of interesting.
Mhm.
That actually the Cam and the sort of Harper and Ethan stuff was my favorite part of the episode. So it was your like least favorite is my
Mhm.
favorite.
Mhm.
Continuing our trend of disagreeing about virtually every major thing on the show.
Mhm. Mhm.
I thought that was the most compelling part, and we'll talk about why when we get to what happens. But um, the Cam, Daphne, Harper, Ethan stuff is we're seeing two relationships in various forms of dysfunction.
Sure.
Right? That's what that is, and outwardly they present very very differently.
Mhm.
Right? If you're observing from the outside, they're like, "Ooh, they have nothing in common." But like when you probe deeper, they're clearly both like very broken relationships in different ways, and I find that just like a really interesting. Interesting.
Hmm.
Um, the other stuff is like okay, yeah, it's not as interesting to me. The Albie stuff, yes, I like. We'll talk about. You know, it's weird. Some of the stuff that's weird. I think.
It just makes me feel very old. I will admit
Mhm,
myself here and say that like the Albie, Portia, Jack, Lucia maneuvering just
mhm,
makes me feel ancient.
mhm. Because you and I are like out of that game. We've been out of that
Yeah,
game for a
totally
while.
out of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, the Lucia stuff. I thought I'm trying to figure out what the show is trying to say about sex work, right?
Yes.
And
It's
we'll talk
very
about that.
difficult to tell what
Yeah,
the opinion is, if there
I,
is an opinion.
I have some thoughts. I think this episode starts to clarify it a little bit,
Mhm.
but Overall, I still think this is still a trend. Like last episode, like a lot of stuff happened. This is a transitional episode. I think there'll be probably some big confrontations next episode,
Mhm.
or things will come to a head. I think is
Mhm.
my guess in the
Mhm.
next episode or two. But I to me, the Cam, Daphne, Harper, Ethan stuff is like the beating heart of the show for me. So why don't we get into it?
Let's do it.
We begin at the White Lotus the next morning from the events of last episode. Cam wakes up with both Lucia and Mia in bed with him. And Ethan is in his own room, and he finally picks up one of Harper's calls. And he's missed many of her calls, but he finally answers. And she asks, like, what did you guys do? And he basically says, we drank a lot, you know? And she starts to sense that something really weird is going on. So Cam gets rid of Lucia and Mia, pays them only $1,800, which is less than what he owes.
Mhm.
Was it stated how much he owed, by the way? I think it was just
I think it's either 3,000 or 5,000.
Mhm.
It's some significant amount.
Yeah. And Cam goes into Ethan's room and lies down in bed next to him and kind of says, "Hey, bro code, you can't tell anyone what happens."
Mhm.
Uh so any thoughts on this so far, Roxana? It was a weird scene when he comes into to Ethan's room, I thought,
But somebody emailed
unsettling.
us about this because I kept being like, I don't understand why Ethan doesn't just leave.
Yeah.
And someone emailed us and was like, bro code. Like if you have this sort of
Yes.
relationship with someone who considers themselves an alpha male, like this is just sometimes the social order that can happen. So I did sense that, and I also sensed that Ethan just wanted it to be over. Like I
Mhm.
can't tell if Ethan wants Cam's approval so much as he just wants to like get through the trip.
That's
So I
my
sort of
sense. Is he's
felt,
just trying to get through the trip, you
yeah,
know?
so I sort of felt that scene. Of course, Cam would go bro code, and of course, he would make some like homoerotic jokes because that just is who Cam is. But yeah, I sort of got that sense of Cam assuming that Ethan would cover it for him, perhaps because there was a history there of Ethan doing that in college potentially. So it felt like a familiar dynamic for them.
Yeah. Uh, but it is a common idea amongst
Sure.
men, the bro code, that when
Sure.
like guys misbehave, that you're not gonna like tattle on them.
Don't narc. Don't snitch.
Don't narc.
Hmm.
I do think Ethan takes it a little bit too far this episode.
Yeah. I
You know?
honestly was surprised that he followed it at all.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I wasn't surprised that he followed it at all, but like to the extent that he does is pretty shocking to me. So
Hmm.
we then cut to the palazzo. Daphne's there with Harper, and Daphne asks Harper to do the sister
Exact
code.
same thing.
Basically, don't talk about things. And she's like, she says this line that I thought was really interesting, where um, Daphne says like, I can trust you because like you don't know anyone. Well, no one I know, right?
Right.
And it does capture this dynamic of, there are these people in your life who are like at the periphery of your life. They're not like the close friends, but sometimes you feel more liberated to talk with them because they don't know any of your close friends, and so they're not going to like tell any of your close friends about like your deepest darkest problems.
Hmm.
And it can be kind of liberating, but also like scary because you don't know them very well. So it's like, what are they going to do with that information?
Well,
Um,
and also coming from Daphne, it's like, you don't know anybody I know because you're not like popular or connected.
yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, but I like that it's captured. Like what I love about the Cam, Daphne, Harper, Ethan storyline is like, I feel like these are very real dynamics that I have witnessed,
Hmm.
occasionally been part of, and I find them to be quite compelling and really well depicted. So
Hmm.
uh, back at the White Lotus, the couples reunite. Ethan's still in a haze, and Harper then goes on this big speech where she's like, "I knew it, I knew it." They they something's really messed up in their relationship.
They
Our
lie
relationship's
to each
yeah,
other.
they lie to each other. Our relationship's way better, and that's when she finds a Durex condom wrapper in the couch. And I love the sound design of all the Aubrey Plaza stuff this episode, because like all the sound is just, there's this like ringing, buzzing, like
Yeah.
the world like tunes out. Because she's kind of processing this information, and she's trying to understand what happened.
What did she miss? What happened?
Right.
How did this happen? Yeah.
My interpretation is she's probably processing multiple possibilities. One of which is, did Ethan sleep with another woman? But another of which is, did Ethan sleep with Cam?
Oh, okay.
That was honestly the number one thing that came to mind, because she keeps asking him, like, what did you guys do? Oh, we drank a lot. It was just you and me and Cam. Was there anyone else? Nope. It was just me and Cam. You know, we just drank a lot, and then she finds a condom. It's like, are these guys like to get? And then Ethan's like thinks it's really important for Cam to have our approval. Like, what's going on? You know.
Okay.
So
that's interesting.
And that's why I think her reaction is also one of like, you described it as passive aggressive, but it's like, it's also, in my opinion, my perspective, one of compassion, because maybe Ethan is clearly like not out. In my opinion, he's not out as a gay person or bisexual person, I don't think.
Okay.
And so like maybe she doesn't want to, like, if he is secretly gay or secretly bi or whatever, she doesn't want to like rush him through that, you know, like she's like she feels betrayed, but she doesn't want to, like, yeah. Anyway,
do you
that's my
actually believe this?
I 100% believe what I'm saying right now.
Okay.
I don't, because just like look at the I'm like, oh, she probably thinks he and Cam got together. Like,
oh, I
what
don't
is
think I don't think that at all.
All right.
I think that she thinks that he cheated on her. And I think that she is increasingly like irritated or frustrated with his refusal to admit that.
Yeah, I just didn't read it that way, because like I
yeah.
didn't read it as like, yes, she's obviously frustrated, like she wishes he would tell her the truth, but like part of me reads into the performance like maybe she thinks he has a good reason for not telling the truth, like beyond just I cheated on you, like you know. But anyway,
Okay.
maybe you find this. I mean, I was like, I was. When I was watching the episode, I was really trying to like put myself in her perspective. Like, what would I think? Like, what would be the first thing that came to mind? And it would be, yeah, that he cheated with another woman. But then, like, as like her line of questioning continued, I was like, oh, maybe she's trying to like figure out if there's something else deeper going on here. So people may disagree, and I suspect that by next episode, this debate will not be important anymore. Like, we'll find out. But anyway,
well, I just think it's interesting because to your point, like the dynamics are revealed to be so messy and murky that I can understand her having this immediate reaction of, am I living through what Daphne is living through? And I almost think there is more empathy and compassion there for Daphne after she discovers this, because I think, like we saw, she thinks that like they're fine, right? She told Daphne that Ethan hasn't changed. Everything's mostly been the same. She felt very secure in that. And then to find the condom, I think sort of skews things in a different direction. I just was, I don't know. Maybe I hate women. I don't know. But I was like, why aren't you just asking him?
To me, it felt like an extremely plausible way for how this might play out. Like, it felt extremely plausible.
Like how to even approach this.
How to even approach it. And also, like, they clearly already had communication problems before, you know, with like him jerking off while, you know, she's, and like not, they don't have an easy time communicating about each other's needs already prior to this event. And so I understand why she wouldn't want to open up this Pandora's box, because there's probably a lot going on there. So anyway.
Well, sorry, just the last thing that I'll say too is like, I like that we're talking through this, because it's making me like confront and reassess some of my initial opinions, because part of my initial opinion also was like, she's a lawyer, she's used to like sticking up for people and sort of being direct and all of that, and I sort of assumed doing that professionally you would be like that personally. But I also think it's very truthful that like you can compartmentalize and act a certain way in your job and then act a different way in your relationship.
Totally.
So I think if I'm going to cut her some slack, which I probably should.
Yeah, I mean, look, Roxana, you're talking with one of the most direct people I know. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm generally extremely direct with people to
Mm-hmm.
to a fault. It's like
Mm-hmm.
created problems for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a lot of compassion for Harper because
Yeah.
yes, I think to be clear, I don't think that's the only Ethan Cam scenario is the only one she's contemplated. I think that
No.
she's trying to
Yes.
process like all these different possibilities of
What
what might
could
be
have
happening,
happened?
right?
Yes.
And she's trying to suss it out, and obviously would love it if Ethan actually just said it to her.
Yeah. And my frustration is also with Ethan because I'm like, why are you protecting this man who told you to inside trade?
I mean, Ethan, I have no sympathy or understanding of. I will say that because like he takes it so far. Like when like she asks him at the beginning, when she finds the condom, and then she asks him later in the day, and then when they're like in bed, she's like, "So what actually happened?" It's like, dude, you're supposed to be a freaking smart guy. Like you
Yeah.
created a start. You're like,
And if
she
you're willing
clearly
to,
knows something is up, right?
and if
She
you're
like, why
willing to
would she be
lie,
asking if she didn't know something is up?
Yeah.
So like, you got to give her something to like indicate that that she like. He was behaving in a way that was bizarre to me. Yes, so there I will agree with you.
It made me think of. Did you see The Last Duel?
I did, yeah.
It made me think of The Last Duel when Ben Affleck is like, deny.
Yeah,
It just felt like if I deny it, then it's like it didn't happen, and she'll never find out.
I understand the bro code idea of like, oh yeah, you don't want to say anything because it's like then like Harper tells Daphne, and then Daphne tells, and then it's a whole thing, and Ethan doesn't want to cause that. I get that, but only to the point where your wife isn't clearly like drilling down and like clearly knows something is, like it just, that was the part that struck me as very implausible. Was like he should know that she knows something is up,
and that she won't let it go.
Yes,
exactly. Like we've already seen over the course of this vacation, she's not going to let stuff go. So why would you sort of expect her to? And then the heartbreaking part of it is that, again, sort of changing my own opinions as we talk, like Daphne sort of knows, right? Like Daphne knows.
Right.
So as much as I resent Daphne for her wealth and access, and I think she's better off than many, many other people, she clearly knows, or at least guesses, what's going on. So if she directly found out, I don't think her life would really be that different. She would just know an additional time that something's happening that she already knew about.
Well, I'm glad to slightly bring you over to my side. It's Ethan that behaves much more weirdly in this episode than Harper, in my opinion. But anyway, any other thoughts on this plot line? I mean, they go to dinner together. It's cool that like I think every day in the on the trip is like an episode of the show. Like you kind of get a sense of the rhythms of the day in the show. They go to dinner together. There's a really hilarious scene, honestly, where Giuseppe, the piano player, collapses, and then Cam like looks at it, is like, "Oh, table for four, please."
Literally just turns away from this man.
Between
never change, Cam. Never change.
Between Triangle of Sadness and The Menu, which I just watched last night, and this scene, it's a really good year for takedowns of rich people eating in nice places. I have to say. But yeah, they go to dinner together, and Daphne's talking about training for a 10K. And after dinner, they each of the couples go to bed, and Cam and Daphne have a seeming reconciliation where Cam says, or Daphne says, "Don't ever leave me again," or Cam says to Daphne, "Don't ever leave me again," and he says, "I won't." Wait, am I? Which? Who said who to what?
I thought that Cam said, "Don't you ever leave me again."
Yes. Okay.
Because it's Daphne who leaves on the trip, right?
Yeah, and then she says, "I won't," and you kind of see the dynamic that she described kind of play out. Amongst the two of them, and again, it's outwardly it seems very like sweet and nice, and like it hides something much more toxic underneath.
Yeah. Either way, whichever one of them says it, there is like codependency there that at this point is established. The only other thing that I would say about this episode is that if we're still playing the who could die game, Harper does walk down to the water at some point, I think. and stares out over it, maybe melancholy, maybe just puzzling through what's happened. But there is a Harper in or near water moment that could be foreshadowing. Maybe.
Perhaps.
Yeah,
Perhaps.
might be.
Well, that is the Harper, Cam, Daphne, Ethan storyline. I said those in a little bit of the wrong order, but that's that storyline, and I really liked it a lot this episode. And hopefully you liked it a little more after talking to me about it, Roxana. So, okay, fair enough.
I still think that their relationships and how they complement and conflict against each other, I think, are the most clearly delineated, right? Like, I think they're the best developed so far this season.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Completely.
I may quibble with like how it's executed, but I think they are the core four.
Yeah, agreed. Well, you know what would probably do these characters some good, Roxana Hadadi,
Tell me.
is if these four characters in the White Lotus felt a little bit more of a sense of community with each other. You know, if they could perhaps bond over some great food, some great community, and I say this because this episode of Decoding TV is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving community since 1965. And it's no surprise here that at Decoding TV, we absolutely love the idea of community. Over the last decade, I've been recapping shows on podcasts and videos, and grateful to find and foster a community of TV lovers who truly enjoy each other's company and who can bond over our shared excitement about the biggest shows in the zeitgeist. And that's really what Cam, Harper, Ethan, Daphne really need, I think, is a better sense of community, a better sense of connection with each other. If they did have that, they probably wouldn't have so many profound issues as depicted on the show.
That's probably true. So, like, split some chicken nuggies and call it good.
Exactly. That's why I'm really proud and excited for Decoding TV to partner with McDonald's, because they truly care about fostering a sense of community. And one of the biggest ways McDonald's fosters their wonderful sense of community is through their incredible crew members who work hard to truly make you feel like you're right at home when you stop at a McDonald's. I have McDonald's down the street, and I always enjoy going there because I'm using the app these days. I get some cool deals, and I'm always greeted by a really friendly crew member who delivers my food to me fast and efficiently. And it's always a delight because McDonald's food, it tastes delicious and it's very comforting. So whether you know that crew member who always remembers that you like your Big Mac with an extra pickle, or the crew member who always greets you in the drive-thru with a warm smile, thank you, McDonald's crew members everywhere, for making our McDonald's visits even more special. McDonald's, I'm loving it.
Thank you to them.
Indeed. All right, let's move on. Other plot lines this episode. So, as you said, the plot lines are starting to intercept, and that makes recapping them a little bit more challenging. But I'm looking at Roxana's notes, and Roxana, by the way, does an excellent job with notes. And you've written here Porsche/Tanya with some Porsche/Billy and Tanya/Quentin thrown in there. So, same morning, Porsche and Tanya discuss Albie. Porsche,
and I said Billy, but it's Jack, right? Isn't the nephew Jack?
You tell me.
I think it's Jack. I don't know why in my mind I decided his name was Billy.
That was just the name you gave to him when
I really did.
Let
me check this.
That was just the name you gave to him when you saw him for the first time. You're like, that's Jack right there.
No, or I said that's Billy. Okay, no. Portia finds herself spending the day with his beguiling nephew, Jack. I just named this man Billy for some reason.
Incredible.
I
take back everything I said about how good
the notes are terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now
they
we know.
are garbage.
They're trash. Yes.
So Portia and Tanya discuss Albie, and Portia's like, I'm kind of into him, but I'm not really into him. And then they run into Quentin and his crew again. And Quentin really takes a liking to Tanya. Quentin is played by Tom Hollander. He is British, but he's an expat, and he now lives in Palermo, and he has a boat. So he invites them to all go to the beach club, which they do. And by doing so, Portia basically blows off Albie, who has been waiting for her by the pool.
Right.
I thought Portia at this point was still behaving reasonably because she's still supposed to be working for Tanya during this time. So
yes,
at this stage, I thought, hey, she's just still working right now.
But because in this realm, everyone can suck. I did think she could tell Albie, like, hey, I definitively cannot hang out today.
That would have been nice. That would
Yeah.
have been nice.
Yeah.
There is a subreddit called
Mhm.
Am I the Asshole? You
Mhm.
know?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And they have like little acronyms for um, whether or not you're the asshole. So you basically post a story and you're like, "Am I the asshole in this situation?"
Right.
And it's short for it, the acronym is AITA. Am I the asshole?
Mhm.
One of the acronyms people can respond with is ESH. Everyone sucks here.
Yeah. Yes. It's so true.
The White Lotus is an ESH situation. Everyone
Yes.
sucks here.
Yes.
Everyone sucks
Yes.
here.
Because Albie is sort of, again, pressuring her to hang out. He's not really picking up on the fact that she might not necessarily want to. But Portia could also be more direct. Like, I
Yes.
feel like she's hedging her bets.
Albie is not picking up on the she's just not that into you vibes.
Yes.
That's Albie's problem.
Yes.
And to me, this is less out of malice and more out of inexperience. You
Yeah.
know?
Okay. That's fair.
But
I mean, I don't necessarily agree, but sure. You can. Okay. Sure.
yeah. Well, we'll find out, certainly, I'm sure.
Hmm.
But anyway, at the beach club, Quentin and his friends are already there. And there's lots of different dudes that Quentin's hanging out with, and it seems like a fun party.
Hmm.
Uh, and Tanya and Quentin seem to like establish a connection, and Quentin's like, "Let's hang out more. Let's come to this island with me. Come on the boat with me. Like, let's do stuff together." And that's most of the episode in terms of their plot line. I think
Yeah.
like Tanya is trying to weigh how faithful she's going to be to Greg. Um, and what how much she's going to indulge herself while she's out here by herself. I don't know if you have anything else to say at this point. This to me just feels like it's kicking off this plot line.
Yeah, I just think it's kicking it off. I would again, if we're on Death Watch, which I'm going to say we are. I'm going to say
Yeah,
we're on Death Watch at this
we're on
point.
Death Watch. Yeah,
We're on Death Watch. I thought that Quentin's story about the woman who was killed for her land was also sort of foreboding.
mm-hmm.
That he tells Tanya the story about this island and this woman who lived there, and she was the matriarch of this family, and developers wanted the land, so they basically killed her and like threw her off a cliff or something. And Tanya was suitably unnerved by this story. And then Quentin was like, but the island is really beautiful. So it is
Yeah.
sort of
So it
that
all makes
whiplash.
it all makes up for it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Portia and Jack do a lot of flirting, which
A
Albie
lot
then
of flirting.
sees from the
Jack is
pool below.
Quentin's nephew.
Yes,
Yeah,
Jack
we
is
should
Quentin's
establish
nephew.
that.
Jack from Essex. He's been in Palermo for a couple months, and he's kind of tired of hanging out with these gay dudes who only hang out with other much older women.
Right.
Seems like Portia's presence is very refreshing to him. So
Tanya's is expected. Portia's is unexpected.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. So then they go to dinner, right?
Mhm.
And uh, Tanya doesn't have any female friends, and they kind of have a conversation. Tanya and Portia have interaction about like the nature of female friendship. A lot of like reflection about female friendship going on this episode between
Mhm.
Daphne and Harper, and now Tanya and Portia. But anyway, the final confrontation happens at the bar when Portia and Jack uh, start hanging out and then start making out, and then it becomes a full blown thing.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm curious if you if you had any more comment on the Portia plotline this episode. I will say that it's very clear. Like, was it just my imagination, or did Portia put a lot more work into her appearance this episode than in previous episodes?
Maybe. I mean,
I
maybe
felt like
before
she was
dinner.
much more heavily made up and like had like a very attractive dress on than
Maybe.
compared to like when she was hanging out with Albie. That's my
Okay.
perception. But
I mean, I could see. I mean, she's clearly into Jack.
yeah, she's clearly into Jay.
She's
So she's
clearly into
gonna
Jack.
yeah.
So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised by that. And she's doing the exact opposite. It's so funny because last episode didn't Tanya sort of tell her don't go for emotionally unavailable men, which felt like go for Albie. Like he likes you,
Yes.
he's nice, whatever.
Yes.
He might not be super exciting, but it seems stable.
Yeah.
But in this episode, she is so, Jack is into you, Jack's hot, Jack likes you. Like, it's clear that Jack is like, I don't want to say bad news, but he's just like the vacation guy, right? I mean, he is who Portia sort of wanted to hook up with to make the vacation go by easier. But I'm sort of getting I don't know, I'm getting sort of I don't want to say nefarious, but just like I don't know, I'm getting a vibe. I'm getting some kind of vibe.
From Jack, you mean?
Yeah, like he's hot, but like I don't know, hot and dangerous, or
Yeah,
like
you worry
hot
he's gonna
and.
break her heart in some way. Yeah,
I mean,
I
he just
mean,
seems like a fuck boy. Like he doesn't
yeah.
seem, you know.
Well, here's what is great about the show, though, is I do think it captures that Portia and Jack have like way better chemistry than Portia and Albie.
100%.
Like, and that's you think that's as you're watching or listening to this, you're like, oh well, of course they would, but it's like no, a lot of work went into the writing and the
Mhm.
acting to make that feel much more organic. Like Albie could have played, they could have figured out a way for Albie to have that kind of you know, chemistry with her. They didn't in terms of like creating the show. Like they didn't do
Yeah.
that. And so I like that you see that dichotomy.
No, I mean, she
Um,
definitely is, to your point, she's definitely trying more. Like,
yes.
she's flirting actively. Like, with
Yeah.
Albie, it's very clearly friend zone from the
Yeah.
beginning. Whereas with this guy, who she first saw in the pool, and now they're hanging out at the beach club, it is very clearly gonna be sexual. And it is by the end of the episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do you want to talk about you sort of mentioned that there's like a competition vibe at the bar. Do you want to talk
Yeah.
about that here or with
Yeah.
Albie?
I don't know that we need to talk about that much stuff that happens to Albie, right? Like
Mhm.
he tries to wait for Portia. That episode, Lucia comes in and kind of their lives intersect, and then he ends up hanging out with her all day. Basically, is kind of what
Mhm.
happens with Albie, right? Um,
And well, let me say, Lucia does not know who Albie is, right?
I think that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's the complicating, interesting point there, is that Albie clearly does not know who she is. Albie, I think, just thinks she's like a local vacationer.
Yeah.
Sweet, innocent Albie does not understand, as Cam did immediately,
Yeah.
that they are sex workers. And Lucia does not know that Albie is connected to Dominic, because Albie basically blows off Bert and Dom when he thinks he's going to be hanging out with Portia. And then when he's upset about not hanging out with Portia, he's like, I still don't want to hang out with you guys.
Right. Right. And, I mean, I think Bert, who's the what's his name?
F. Murray Abraham,
F.
the
Murray Abraham
grandfather.
character, he like knows everything now.
He
Like
knows everything.
he
Yeah.
knows that they're prostitutes that slept with Dominic, and he knows that Albie's like potentially going to hook up with one
Right.
of them
Because they were in
Um,
his room. So he
yes.
also knows that they have access to his room for some
Yes.
reason.
So he knows the
Yeah.
whole deal. He knows he has all the information now.
He's having a great time on this vacation. Everything's being paid for. He's getting
Yeah.
free entertainment.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
it's great.
Yeah.
Bert's
Yeah.
having a great time.
Yeah, agreed. So anyway, they at the bar that night, right? Albie's like, "Hey, I have dinner with someone, someone
Mhm.
else," and he and Lucia start hanging out at the bar. Oh, here's what I will object to. Okay,
Mhm.
so I largely think the depiction of Albie has been pretty sympathetic so
Mhm.
far. So
Mhm.
far, but I did get a whiff of the assholishness when he emphasized to Lucia that he is from Stanford, like he went to Stanford.
Yes.
He's like, "Oh yeah, I graduated from college. I went to Stanford, FY."
Mhm.
Now, David Chen, went to a small school near the Boston area called Harvard. I don't
Mhm.
know if you've heard of it.
I have not.
And
No. Is
in
it? Do
the
people know about it?
in
Never heard of it.
the in social circles in Boston, it was there's a term about like what you like the act of bringing up that you went to Harvard is called dropping the H bomb. At least it was decades ago. That's probably not what the cool kids are saying these days.
Mhm.
But people, when you're in school, people will ask you like, "What do you do? Like, where do you go to school?" And then you need to make a decision about whether or not you're going to tell them
Mhm.
um, which school you went to, right?
Mhm.
Like, because if you say, "Oh, I go to school near Boston," and then they're like, "Well, what school?" and then you say
Yeah.
Harvard, then you look like an asshole because it's like, "Well, why did you just say that from the beginning?" Like,
I think it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't.
100%.
Because if you
100%.
say you went to school near Boston, I'm like, I fucking know where this guy went to school. You know,
and then if you say like I went to Harvard, then you look like you're like
this
touting
asshole.
that. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's my issue with Albie. He didn't need to say jack shit about any of that stuff.
Literally nothing.
He was just like, I went to school. You probably don't even know where Stanford is.
No.
So the fact that he's like, I went to Stanford, I'm like, oh, like I'm starting to get on the Roxana train here about like Albie being a jerk.
How did you feel about him telling Lucia that her English was really good?
I thought that was fine. You know.
Was it really fine?
Why, Roxana? Why do you think it's not fine?
Just again, I feel like there's so many implications there. Like, oh, your English is really good. Yeah, it's Europe. Like, I feel like most people's English in Europe is good. Whatever.
Fair enough. I really feel like there's this toxic thing going on with you and Albie. You're just you know how when like you don't like someone so much, like every one of their actions,
everything becomes
negative.
A slight.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. That's how I feel about you and Albie right now.
Stupid.
But
the last thing I feel like we should say about Albie before we talk about the bar scene is that he again sort of tells his father that he's not going to advocate for him to his mom.
Extremely reasonably, I would say.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
And actually, like, I just finished watching The Crown season 5 this week too, and there's like a bunch of scenes of like Diana inappropriately talking about her relationships with her son, arguably inappropriately talking about her relationship with her son, and it's like, I don't think kids should need to be in this position, and I think Albie is right to reject Dominic's suggestion that he like be the mediator of their relationship. Like that's my perception. What did you think, though, Roxana? Since you don't seem to like anything Albie does.
No, I mean, I think that's fair. Again, I think we're sort of potentially talking around the extent of what Dominic did.
Yeah.
So I wonder if we'll ever get more details or if that will just remain somewhat nebulous. But it's clear that generationally, Bert, I don't think, knows as much. And I think Albie seems to know everything and wants to have nothing to do with it. So I can understand that. And, you know, it's like, poor Dominic. Dominic has a very, like, woe is me episode where he doesn't hang out with his son. He's irritated by his father. And then he just goes back to his room and sadly looks at porn.
He doesn't even have the will to watch pornography in his room. Like, he's just like, I'm done. I'm done with this.
Man.
He's like clearly a broken man. When even the U porn is not enough for him, that's when you know he's done.
It's not.
But yeah, I feel very strongly about it, like in my own life, like that children should not be put in a situation where they need to like deal with their parents' shit, you know?
Sure.
And so I feel like Dom is out of line. See, somehow, Roxana, all the sympathy points are saved for Dominic, even though he's the one explicitly acting like the biggest asshole in this episode.
Yeah, I mean, I have a serious fondness for like sad old men. Like that's like a given. Young men, trash.
Yes.
Sad old men, that's my jam.
Fair. So,
but yeah, so Dom and Bert go back to their rooms, right? So they leave Albie at the bar.
Yeah.
With Lucia.
Yeah.
So Albie and Lucia are at the bar. Porsche and Jack are at the bar. They each sort of see each other.
Yeah.
And they decide to do, you know, the thing you did in high school where you would try to like make the other person jealous.
It's very high schoolish.
Yes. It's very high school.
Yeah.
So eventually each side is like making out. And then Lucia and Albie go back to his room. And again, the implication is that they have sex, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
and it, you know, this was like, I know you are on the Albie hate train, and that's cool, but like this is sad to me because I actually felt like Porsche and Albie like could have had a good relationship, you know, to some degree. Like they could have learned from each other. They did feel like a good match, but then like once like
you genuinely think they could have had a romantic relationship.
I don't know. You know, Porsche clearly wasn't into him, you know, but it's like so maybe it's like a good idea on paper, you know, but like you need to have chemistry with someone to be good with each other. But there's clearly like some affection there, some chemistry there. And then they both get into this like escalating jealousy contest, basically, right? That like once the missiles have been launched, it's hard to call them back into the silos, basically, is kind of what has happened here. And there's a moment when Albie sees them making out, and then he's like, I'm gonna go back to my room, and then Lucia's like, don't let her win. And I
Yeah.
felt like that was like, I thought that was like a nice compassionate moment from Lucia. Even, yes, it's in the furtherance of like vengefulness, but like it's kind of like Lucia's like basically having compassion on this guy whose dad she had sex with earlier the week. But yeah, I'm curious, like,
I
if you
think
had any
what
other thoughts on this plot line or that scene.
well, all of this is so hard to tell because Jack and Lucia are the ones who amplify things, right? Because Portia is like, I feel really bad. Albie's over there, like she at least says she feels some sort of
Right.
shame or discomfort
Yeah.
about the sort of failure of this relationship, and it's Jack who starts kissing her, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
So Jack is like, fuck that guy, and
Mm-hmm.
then Lucia is the one who is like, hey, fuck her. With Lucia, I think it becomes complicated, and maybe this is a way to sort of talk about her storyline as well, um, because in the beginning of this episode, she is sort of regretful about being a sex worker. She
Mm-hmm.
talks about like the embarrassment that she feels, and she thinks she's going to be judged, and there's like a lot of Catholic guilt happening. So I couldn't glean from this interaction with Albie if she is trying to work him because she's in the hole from what Cam owes her. So if
Mm-hmm.
she is seeing him as a potential client or if she likes him outside of that.
That was my interpretation. Was like, I don't think she considered him a John. I think she was like,
Okay.
she's been trading sex for money this whole week,
Mhm.
and she now wants to use her sex for good. Basically,
Oh
is
my
kind
god.
of
The
is kind
phrasing
of
of that.
yeah. I know. I'm sorry.
Okay,
But you know what I'm saying?
let's
Like
do it. Let's
she
do it differently. She wants to have sex in a non-professional
transactional,
capacity.
yeah,
Yes.
capacity.
Well,
Yes.
see, and that's the thing, non-transactional. I think all relationships are transactional.
Mm-hmm.
Even personal relationships are in some way transactional.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, so she wants it outside of the context of direct financial payment. Maybe. I don't know if we know
Yeah,
enough. I still
I
don't
I
know if
would
we know
agree.
enough about her to know.
I would agree that the characterization of Lucia Mia is thin, and that's a
Hmm.
problem for the show.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I do think like what we do see is like it's an act, from my perspective, it's an act of compassion, like that
Okay.
she takes pity on this guy and is like, this guy's getting completely emotionally devastated by this other person, and like I'm gonna like show him a good time because that's something that I know how to do. You know,
Do women do this? Do women take pity enough on random men to give them a blowjob? I don't
I have
know.
no idea. It's never happened to me before,
Yeah,
so
I don't know. Hmm. I don't know.
but I think it's conceivable. So anyway,
Okay. Okay. It's hard.
uh,
It's hard because there. Yes, I still don't really feel like they are fully fledged characters.
yeah,
Although we're
yeah.
spending more time with them, I
Well,
still don't really sense that.
and I think that lack of characterization really becomes a problem this episode. Character development
Hmm.
becomes a problem because in this episode, as you said, there is the conversation with Mia and Lucia where Lucia starts feeling bad, and then Mia's like, "Wow, like now I feel super empowered with
I
my
like
sex.
this.
I like this. This is great. I want to do this more." And then so she tries to sleep with that piano guy.
Hmm.
And what I thought was interesting about that scene is, or what I thought that scene was trying to say is, even in a scenario where a woman feels empowered to use her body in a way that benefits her, like
Hmm.
where like she has full control and autonomy and decision making ability, she is still in some way limited by the man, right? Like she's still um like the man still holds like some amount of control even in that scenario. That's
Hmm.
kind of what I thought. That was my interpretation of that scene. That said, I thought that whole sequence was really funny. Like, going into the church and it being deconsecrated and them like, being embarrassed in front of all these like religious imagery, like all that stuff. I thought that was very amusing.
Hmm.
And it's also like extremely sad and depressing because there's that moment when like she gives him stuff that she thought was Viagra, but it's not.
Right.
Um, and they're sitting there waiting for him to get hard. And it's just like, this is like one of the most depressing scenarios I can think of, is being in a deconsecrated church waiting for this guy's dick to get hard. Like that's
Hmm.
probably pretty sad moment for Mia in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of my thoughts on how that played out. What did you think, Roxana?
I don't know. I honestly don't know because I truly don't know if the show knows. Like we talked
Mm-hmm.
about this from the very beginning, where I sort of thought there was a um, judgmental,
Yeah.
sort of woman shaming angle
Mm-hmm.
to the first time that Dom and Lucia have sex. And then I
Like, is she
felt
supposed to be forbidden? Like,
right.
is he like going into the dark side by like,
Yeah, what does she
sleeping with her? Right.
represent?
Exactly. Yeah.
All that stuff. And then in this episode, it again, everything about it just felt very rushed. It felt very rushed for Lucia to both have this, I should stop doing this, I feel bad, and yet I need to find another client and like make ends meet. It felt like that was sort of rushed. There was some whiplash to that decision making for me. And then again with Mia, my understanding of the Mia character is that she's never done this before. She
Mm-hmm.
doesn't sleep with Dom. I'm not sure if she sleeps with Cam. I think that is sort of murky again.
Yeah.
So I think to go from someone who has been like refusing to do these things to someone who's like, actually, I think this is really good, and I'm gonna sleep with the
Yeah.
piano player to get exactly what I want, felt very naive, or at least very again hasty. So
Yeah. To be
I
fair,
don't
like the
know.
character seems pretty young, so it's understandable that a character like that would be naive. But I
I
think you're
don't
right.
know, but
We don't know enough about the character, so to the extent that like her pivoting to that, it's
yeah,
not very meaningful if you don't know what she was like before. Like, what was she always predisposed to this, or
right.
you get a little bit of it, but like it's not enough, in my opinion, to make this heel turn really meaningful. So
I
I
agree.
would agree with you there. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I felt like then the shame that she feels in this church, right? Because the first time she stops because she is like focusing in on the like religious iconography and it makes her uncomfortable. So again, it's sort of like I feel like the show wants to have it both ways. I think it wants to both say like sex work could empower you, maybe, but it also could lead you down this road of like self-loathing. And
Hmm.
I don't buy it necessarily with these characters.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Um, all right, and then I think the only other thing to discuss. Well, I guess I do want to mention. I just think it's inherently funny, the situation where she's trying to feed this guy Viagra, and she probably gives him like acid or
Molly, I think,
something,
is that the
Molly or
implication?
something. That's
Yeah.
that's like, I think just that's hilarious, like inherently as a scenario.
Hmm.
And I think she also realizes, wait a second, like this is just some random piano guy at this bar. Like, I don't think he can actually help me achieve my dreams. Like that
Right.
does.
Why would she think that? Again, just to go back to like, I don't know how
Yeah.
naive they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
Why would she think this random man would be her key to success to being a singer? It just doesn't track.
People believe
Dom
lots
could
of silly
probably help her
things.
more. Dom is like a big Hollywood producer,
Yes.
right? Isn't that the implication?
Yes.
So,
Look, people believe lots of silly things when they're in their early 20s, Roxana, uh the people don't know how the world works.
you know
So,
what's funny is that you're saying this about two female characters, but I did not hear you saying this about Albie, who is also in his early 20s.
uh I think I did say that. I was
Did
like, hey, this is.
you?
I literally said inexperience is like a lot of what's causing his
Hmm.
problems.
Hmm.
But
I'm
I
going to
think you're.
slander you. I'm going to start slandering you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm being sympathetic to both of them. I'm saying like none of them know how any of this
Yeah.
works. Anyway, both parties is what I'm saying. Anyway, okay. The only other thing is Valentina in this
Hmm.
episode. Um, in the earlier episodes of this podcast, I said maybe Valentina is just socially awkward. That's why
Hmm.
she's saying all those ridiculous things to the guests when they arrive. Now I'm like, no, Roxana, Valentina's just bad at her job.
She's just
Like,
bad at her job,
she's
I
just bad at her
think.
job. Like, she's
Or is it just a language barrier thing? But
no,
she
no.
actively does not want to help the
Yes,
guests.
yes. Like she's like, oh, I don't know where to get any jewelry, and then you know, um, this is one of the big complaints of this season,
Mhm.
Roxana,
Mhm.
from like that I've read online, is that there is no Armand-esque character. We are not in with the service people as
I
much
agree.
this
I think we
episode.
said that in the beginning.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
there is a lack here of that perspective. Although there are more Italian characters, more characters of this location.
Yes.
There is
Yes.
not really a sense of how the resort is run. I feel like
Yeah.
there are far fewer resort employees overall
Yeah.
to really get a sense of what is it actually like to be here and work here.
Yeah, which was one of the cool ideas behind the first season, was like we're
Mhm.
getting it from both sides.
Mhm.
And here we have Valentina, who like is, in my opinion, like it's actually almost like implausibly bad how bad she is. Like
Mhm.
I have trouble believing someone who treats guests like she does would rise to her level.
Wealthy
in the show.
guests. Very wealthy
It
guests.
just, I have on a very rare occasion been able to visit a resort like this, and that is not how you treat guests like that in this kind of
Mhm.
resort. So yeah, so that's bad. But she has these kind of weird moments with Isabella this episode, where she kind of gives Isabella this gift, this starfish that she pins on her jacket. It feels like maybe she's into Isabella, possibly, right?
I think she's into Isabella. I just think the show is doing a very bad job
Yeah.
making clear that she is a lesbian or queer. I just think that's not clear. And again, it sort of is like, again, the Armand.
Yeah, Armand was into his other fellow,
coworkers
at his thing too. So this to me just feels like a shittier, half-baked version of the Armand storyline in some ways, which is kind of a bummer for now. Still 3 episodes left to go in this season, so maybe it'll change. But yeah, anything else about the Valentina storyline or
I don't
this
think so.
episode
Yeah,
in general?
I think there's very little to say because there's very little to dig into there. So
yeah. Well, that is season 2, episode 4 of The White Lotus. And the title of the episode is In the Sandbox. Biggest things for me I'm curious about, obviously curious who's going to die this season, but also I just want to see how the Harper Ethan storyline resolves. Like, I think there's probably going to be some confrontation or some blow up next episode, and that'll be interesting. But I'm really loving that storyline so far, and I'm really enjoying this podcast, Decoding
Me
TV,
too.
with you, Roxana Hadadi.
I cannot believe that we're over halfway through at this point.
We're over halfway through.
Yeah,
it's flown by, and really appreciating people's engagement on the emails and writing in, and it feels like a little community has formed around the podcast. So we're really appreciative of that. So, Roxana Hadadi, tell people where they can find more of your work on the internet until our next episode.
Yes, you can find me at Vulture, or I guess for now you can find me on Twitter.
Yep.
For as long as that is a medium where you can find someone, you can find me there.
And I would strongly recommend you follow Decoding TV on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, at Decoding TV. More episodes of the podcast at podcast.decodingtv.com. Email us at decodingtv@gmail.com. And if you like this podcast and want it to continue and cover other shows throughout the year, become a paid member at decodingtv.com. We really appreciate it. Until next week, thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, David Chen here. Thank you so much for watching that video from Decoding TV. If you want to get an audio version of the show, all you got to do is go to podcast.decodingtv.com. And if you want to support what we do, get ad-free episodes of the podcast and also bonus episodes of the podcast, go to decodingtv.com and become a paid member. Of course, you can also like and subscribe for more. We appreciate it. Thanks. See you later.